This channel is supported by Truefire. Truefire is an online library.
Enough, you can get the Truefire All Access Pass for as cheap as they ever do it, the $99 thing, so just jump and do that if you're looking for...
I get asked pretty often, and it's not slowing down, what my delay and reverb settings are in Helix. Now, I've definitely done videos talking about this sort of thing, but since it happens often, and since I guess some of you guys have, discovered this thing, whatever I'm doing here, more recently, these are some settings that have actually stayed really consistent. I know, obviously, you're well aware that I like to chop and change bits and pieces and try different bits of gear and all that sort of stuff, but I would say probably in like 95% of whatever you hear, I'm using these delay and reverb settings. Like, it's on my Eric Lead preset, it's on my Perfect Strat preset. It's just basically my go-to things. And even when I'm in like Fractal World, as much as I love the reverbs and delays in there, I've not found like my sound as well as I have with this. So it's the glitch, reverb and dual delay. I'll get into the Helix settings here and show you them, show you how I use them. For live use, it's a little bit different and a little bit more problematic sometimes, because there's often a question mark about whether you're going to be even heard in stereo, and I think quite a big part of this sound is like the bloom of the reverb kind of going and getting out of the way of the guitar. But anyway, so these are the settings that I've found work quite nicely for me. So yeah, hopefully this is useful to two of you guys who had questions around this. I'm happy to talk about this sort of stuff. If you want to grab my presets, you can via the Gumroad link in the description. And you'll see settings there. Or if you just want to build presets and take these settings for yourself, then absolutely do that as well. One thing I might consider that you might find useful would be to map an expression pedal to some of these elements. And another thing that I'll experiment with in this video is actually using just the reverb by itself, because I think that's the more important part for me. I used to think, and like Andy Timmons has kind of gone the opposite direction, where he just has his halo, and I think Andy would as well, where the reverb is less important and he actually just uses a delay. I think that makes sense when you're Andy Wood or Andy Timmons, when you're playing like massive stadiums. Makes quite a lot of sense. Not stadiums necessarily, but you know what I mean. Big venues. Probably some stadiums. Anyway, but equally for me, if I'm playing at home, like the reverb is quite an important part of the sound. Anyway, so let's get into it. If you want some full transcriptions, Patreon is the place to go for those. And I'm considering whether I start doing some jazz stuff on Patreon. So do let me know via email if you think that's a good idea to start doing again. I've not really had much time for it, but I feel like maybe this is something I should be focusing more attention towards. Cheers for stopping by. still think that was one of the most beautiful chord progressions ever. Yeah, that was D'Angelo's How Does It Feel, where it goes from like an A minor to a G to like a C, dominant 7 sharp 11 to D major. Beautiful. Okay, so what I thought is this is one of the more recent presets that I've made, but the thing that I've kind of liked about Helix for a long time is that I can kind of take a modular approach with it. This is one of those really cool things about modeling, where it's like, well, I know that this particular arrangement here works really nicely for me. So I guess we'll start off. So this is just to illustrate to me which is the more important part, which I think is the reverb. So I think if I were to do the opposite of that, the one that is more what I actually kind of need, because I sometimes feel like the delay can actually be like a little bit distracting in a way that the reverb is not so much. So the thing that we're using is glitz in stereo. Now make sure that you do that, because I've made this mistake many times where it's like, oh. And this is also the trouble of what I'm saying about when you collapse these things to mono, even if the settings are somewhat similar, it's actually like a totally different experience. And the other thing is that if you've got a mono block here, that my dual delay is now going to be down the center too. So that's one area that I think you need to be really careful of and carefully manage. Just, you know, go through every now and then and just check, like, is all this right? So like a guitar amp will collapse things to mono, as will a cab. EQ can also collapse things to mono. So you just need to be careful about how you're setting this stuff up. Anyway, so the reverb settings first of all then. If I start this again, because I don't think they're straightforward stock settings. So I've got the decay at 5.1 on the glitz stereo reverb. The pre-delay is down to 1 millisecond, which is basically off. The low cut is off. The high cut is open up, so I get as much of that high end as I can. 15.5 kilohertz. The mix here is at 18%, and that sometimes will go up to 22%, as you can see there. But mix around 18%, and that's something that you could vary. Like if you want it to be a little bit more subtle, down 14. Like live, my sort of cleans will have like that on about 5%, but once it's time to solo or playing at home, 18 to me is about good. Level 0. Now delay, this is an important part of what this is. So I have it 64. So that's actually like giving you sort of like the slapback that you would get from a room. So it's not really just a straightforward reverb. That would be straightforward reverb. And then this 64 milliseconds. It's not quite the same as pre-delay, but it's not totally different from it either. I don't know why I said either. Okay, and then the rate is at 1.8 hertz, and the depth is at 3.8. So you get a bit of motion in the tail. And then crossover is at 900 hertz. These kind of things are not making huge amounts of difference. I think this might be to do with, I mean, who knows really what it's about. Do you know what I mean? You read the things, but yeah, glitz, reverb, crossover, who really knows what it does? I've probably done a video on it, but I can't remember at this point. And then modulation mix is at 5. So if we had that all the way up at 10. So there you can hear what is going on, right? The crossover. So if I go down. Changing. Like that upper end of it. And then if I go all the way off. I mean, it's definitely... Yeah, so this is... It's like controlling the balance of that upper end stuff. Anyway, so I had it at like 900 hertz. But just mess with those sliders, I guess really is the takeaway with that. So that is the glitz. So what I like about it is kind of that it gets out of the way when you need it to. And I think it's got a fairly natural sound to it. As you go along with it, it starts to become a little bit less natural, but this 5.1, it's kind of there and then not. Okay, so that's glitz. Then my delay settings are somewhat easier, but again, stereo dual delay, left time 375, right time 500. I think those are default, and this is kind of not dissimilar to like the Andy Timmons Halo thing, except that these don't like interact. And they don't really diffuse either. So I don't have the high cut or low cut on. You could if you wanted to. Then the left feedback, I kind of tweaked that so that essentially that they stay sort of present in the left and right for about a similar amount of time. Otherwise it can be like a little bit unbalanced. So 71 on the left, 62 on the right. Left mix 23, right mix 23. This is again one of those things where actually you might want to experiment with sometimes having that lower. You know, if I was playing live, for instance, I'd probably have that delay mix down slightly, especially if I was just going to direct front of house. 23 at home is about fine, but probably that's a bit more of a comfort blanket as well. So like 18, 15 might be, you know, something. Slightly less distracting. I think that's kind of the aim with delay in general, is that you don't necessarily want it to really jump out at you unless you really want it to jump out at you, if you know what I mean. Then there's modulation modes which you could use, but I don't, so that's just off. So that's basically my delay settings, as I use them, and that's been the case for now years. I think these settings initially came from, I think, probably my Eric Johnson attempt. So if I try and find like Eric combined, see here. So on the clean, that's where those reverb settings came from. Sort of trying to do that Eric Johnson blooming thing. The delay settings there are a bit different, but not totally different. So you'll see some of those key elements stay pretty much the same, as in no modulation. Left and right mix vary, but that 71-62 thing comes from there as well. And if I turn off the time, that is, I think, where these initially came from, if you wanted a bit of history. So that Eric combined and the Eric, you know, clean and lead, I made like absolutely yonks ago on the HX Stomp. So these have really been like persistently my go-to settings. So, you know, in case any of you guys are newish here and haven't seen these settings before, that's what they are. I'll catch you in another video soon. Jump up into the Gumroad folder if you want to check out any of my Helix sounds, or for my other modelers as well. And I'll catch you in another video soon. Thanks whoever asked about that. I can't remember now. You know, there's quite a few of you, but yeah, there you go. Cheers.